So there's the setup overall for just really basic without any sort of subwoofer. You just got a soundboard, an iPod, 2 mics, and 2 sets of speakers on either end. It takes about half an hour to set this up once you get good at it, but budget an hour for the first time for sure. Alright, so here's the setup we have for graduation practice. This would be with an iPod, a soundboard, and then just the 2 sets of speakers. So these are the QSCs right here. They're by far the best speakers. You can hear, it's starting to get a little fuzzy, it's starting to get blown a little bit. They're just sitting on a stand. And we got the Mackies sitting next to them. Right here. So then in the back, we have a speaker cord, or a mic cord coming from the soundboard that comes into the input of the QSC, and that's that top left input right there. Make sure the knob is on the mic. And then output, always use the middle lower one. Output goes down to the Mackie's input. And if you wanted to chain these together more, you could go from the output on the Mackie to the input on another speaker. Power cord going to a power strip, which is going on a long yellow power cable all the way over to the scoreboard. And these ones are set, they're set for graduation practice, so they're about 11 o'clock right now, and about 11 o'clock for volume. So from the soundboard, here's what we got going on. We have 2 mics as 2 inputs. This green mic goes up to the mic that's up on the podium. And this blue cable, I like the colored cables because then you can tell what's going to what microphone easily. And this is, got an on-off switch right here. Just turn it on top. Check 1, check 1. That is on channel 2. Again, high controls, mids, bass. You don't need to worry about these ones here. Left and right. Mute, if you just wanted to mute the channel without turning the slider down. And then the volume is right about -10 for the 2 microphones. Then I have the iPod plugged in with 1/4-inch cables, 1 in each channel. And the gain is set right about 11 o'clock as well. That's a good spot for gain. Don't go any higher than noon. That's also called trim, but you want right around 11 o'clock. So that the iPod is controlled through these 2 channels right here, 3 and 4. G-Love and Special Sauce. Then here are your main outputs right here. These 2 sliders together. You have right and left. Alright, so then the outputs, you got power right back here. Outputs, left and right. They just go to these mic outputs right here. And this output runs over and goes to the input on the QSC. It goes right up here into the top left. So that's the first input. You got 11 o'clock volume, and then output from the middle on the bottom, the line out, over to the input of the Mackie. You got power and power here. These guys are just plugged into a power strip at the bottom here, and then they have another extension cord running them back over to that first power strip. Alright, so today we are here at the aquarium. We're doing prom. Prom 2013. I'm going to show you how to set up the sound. So, hi guys, hope you're having an awesome year. Love ya. So here's how we start out with. This is a full sound setup. Typically for a pep rally or something like that, we would only do speakers. But for this type of sound setup with a dance, we use everything, meaning the subwoofer right here, and the large QSC amplifier, and then 4 speakers on top. So what we do typically is we set the subwoofer right here in the front of the stage with a table over the top, and then we run these large electrical cables to feed the main power for the sub. So these are the QSCs. I'll go over here really quick on the back, what we got going on. These are inputs right here. This can take either a 1/4-inch or a mic cable, which is called XLR. You can put 1 input over here and 1 input over here. There's 2 volume knobs for them. Typically what we do when we first start at the system is we start at 9 o'clock, just so that people aren't getting their ears blown off. And then for a dance, I never usually go past about 11. That's about the max volume you ever want out of these things because they're so loud. Power's right here. They have a certain type of plug. You can see they've been broken off, but they're blue tipped. These blue plugs are the ones that go in here. These power plugs, anything that's got this kind of like a roof of a house or a barn, it's called an IEC cable. They go on computers, monitors, everything. IEC cables go into there. And then what you can do is you have an input to the speaker and then an output. When you're using the output, always use the line out. Do not use this line out because it sucks. Use the one line out here at the bottom. So then that's the whole thing. Right here you have a couple options. If you have an external sub, which we will tonight, we're going to put it on that setting because we don't want a lot of bass coming through these. When you're not using a subwoofer, put it on normal. And then if you really want a lot of bass, you can put it on deep. Be careful with that because it could blow the speaker if you run your signal too loud. If you have someone speaking through a microphone, put it on vocal boost. If you're just playing music, keep it on flats. Right here, this is just your power limit and off. That's the little light on the very front. There's a small LED right here in the front that lights up. And if you want to have that show up, you just turn it off or on or whatever. That will tell you that the speaker's working. When you go to hook in a iPod, you can hook in an iPod right here, red and white, and then control the volume right here. So you can use the speaker by itself without the rest of the system if you'd like to. We own So Mini is that when you do football games in the fall, they have to run power all the way from where the generator is sitting, all the way to the sound booth, and then inevitably somebody else wants power cords too, so we just have like lots of few power cords. Because everyone was always begging for more extension cords, and we deliver what the people want. So these ones are the ones we use for the DJ light bar. You'll notice they have a hose clamp on them because this mechanism got broken a long time ago. So we just unloosen the hose clamp, and then you can adjust the height of the bar, or the pole I mean, and then just tighten down the hose clamp when you get your final height. So what we typically do for DJ lights is we put them on the two sides of the stage. Put kind of one right there, and the other one just on the other side. Now these ones are for speakers to set up. They're pretty self-explanatory. Here's how to work them. This clamp right here just loosens and tightens. That adjusts your height. You don't want to go too high. And then you can put a pin through there to keep it from falling. This one adjusts your bass, and if they won't open, just kind of shake them like that, and then they open up into a triangle. When you open up these basses, a lot of kids try to set them up very narrow like this, which is extremely dangerous. Other people try to make them look like a tripping hazard, which is also extremely dangerous. What you want to do is a nice kind of 45. When you clamp it down, you don't have to kill it. Just clamp it down, just tight, so that it's not going to go anywhere. This clamp, if you don't have a pin, you should do it fairly tight, but watch it because this will break if you clamp it too tight. So there you have, there's a speaker tower. The way we typically do these is we start like this, about mid-height, clamp it down slightly. Take your speaker. What I do is I hold, I find the area right here, and then I go like this, and then I can feel it right when it's on the pole. That way you're not doing any guesswork and you're not trying to get underneath it to see it. Then if you need to, Christian, you could help me with this. If you need to, I have one kid hold it, the other kid unclamp it, bring it to the height you're going to want for whoa! Got it. That was awesome. We'll edit that out. So a good height for tonight is probably about right there. Clamp it down, and then you're all set. What we'll do with these speakers is we'll put them off to the side. So they go right over here, right off the edge of the stage. So actually now with that in mind, we probably should use a little bit more height. Again, you don't want to go all the way up. If you you go all the way up, come back down one hole.
Okay.
And then you're all set. So there we have our speaker set up. And on the outside of each QSC, we put a Mackie. These Mackies are not quite as nice sounding, so we usually use them for fill. They're very simple on the back. You can't plug in an iPod, for instance, by themselves. They just have a regular IEC power cable. You can hook in one mic cable, and you can run one mic cable out. And there, here's the volume for them. At the very most, we only ever go up to about 11 o'clock. Same deal as the QSCs. And here's the volume there. These ones have a low cut. This would be like taking off that subwoofer on the QSC. It takes off the bass. So if it sounds too bassy, do the low cut. A contour is good for voices. It takes out the mids. So if you want voice, just put the contour button, but it's really not that big of a deal. So this one is broken. It's just kind of unfortunate. Some kid ratcheted it down too hard. It's broken here, so what I do is I just set it down and right about like that, a little bit more narrow than I usually would do, and it's never fallen over on itself. So it's usable, but I always put a Mackie on it because I don't care if the Mackie's hit the ground. Okay. When you go to use these ones, pull it up a little bit, at least like this. Otherwise, when you put the speaker on it, you're not going to be able to move it up. So move it up slightly, and then put the speaker on. So you can check this out. So these Mackies we set on the outside. I kind of nest the two stands together like that, because obviously I don't want some kid kicking that and making it fall over. So I'm going to nest them together. Same drill as last time. Just find out where the bottom is on the speaker and guide it onto the top, and then adjust the height. Generally I leave the Mackies a slightly bit lower than the QSCs because they're larger speakers and it looks better. This is the amplifier for the QSC. This is probably the most tricky piece of sound equipment in the entire regiment to use. The main thing about this amplifier is that it has to be free on the front and on the back. It breathes through the front and the back. You can put in stuff as much as you want on the sides, but it has to be open on these two ends to breathe. It's two channels. You got channel 1 right here, channel 2 right here. This little clip means it's running too hot and you need to turn it down. Generally, I run it at 28. Some people run their amps always at max. I generally don't try to do that. There's on and off. It's an RMX 1450, puts out 1400 watts.
That is every acre I've got in the house.
Awesome, thank you so much. Here's what we got, and we'll go over this in more detail later. But coming from the board, here's channel 1 and channel 2. We're actually going to be using XLRs, or mic cables. So we're going to plug them into channel 1 and channel 2 right here. If you had a 1/4 inch instead, you would simply plug them in there. So what we do with the subwoofer is you can see here on this diagram that it says bridge mono. What bridge mono means is that it literally bridges, there's two separate amplifiers in this unit, and you can run them separately to two different sides, or you can hook them together in one giant signal to one subwoofer, which is of course what we're going to do. So I'm going to show you this plug. It's called a banana plug, and it plugs into these two red ones together. It bridges the amplifier. So that's the output. So we're going to go input channel 1 and output the bridge mono. The main thing that's tricky with this amplifier that's hard to remember is all of this information right here. And this is what you have to do in order to do this. Numbers 5 and 6, or sorry, 6 and 7 need to be on bridge mono on mode. What you can see there, the little indents are towards bridge mono on. If you want them off, if you're running 2, you literally have to get in there with a paper clip or a screwdriver and move them back over. And now you can run 2 channels. If you leave this on mono on, you will only have the ability to run 1 channel. Everything else is set up here in this diagram. If you want to see what you're doing, there's actually a cheat sheet over here on how to set it up. So what I'm referencing right now is that I have bridge mono mode, and I'm just following the diagram. So I want 4 through 8 to the right and number 10 to the left.
Are the rest in the middle, or?
It doesn't matter. They don't have any bearing with the others.
Okay.
So all I did was put 4 through 8 to the right and number 10 to the left. That means I'm running now in mono mode, and it will work. this gets a little bit more complicated. This is called a crossover. I don't know if the lighting is even good enough here. What the crossover does, it splits the signal. This allows you to send all deep signals to the bass, to the subwoofer, and all high signals to the mains, to the speakers sitting over there. We've never used channel 2. What we've always done, like because we're only running one subwoofer, is we only use channel 1. And you can see here it's still set up from Winter Formal from last year. That's gonna sound beautiful. On the back, this is called a DBX crossover. This is the best they make. This is the power right here. This is channel 2, so this is pretty much just gonna be dead to you. But what we wanna do is that run this in mono. Notice how it's pushed in, so it's running in mono. And we want this out because it's just running normal. We don't want it summed, so we want mono, normal. So one in, one out. Here's where our inputs come. We're gonna have an input coming from the board that goes right into here. That's the input. And then the output that we're gonna send out is gonna go off of here. This is actually gonna be the one, the low output is gonna be the one that goes to the QSC amplifier. So here's our chain. We're gonna go from the soundboard to the crossover, and from the crossover to the amplifier, from the amplifier to the subwoofer. It's quite a chain. Put the amplifier at an angle right here, that way it can have plenty of room to breathe out the front and out the back. Otherwise, like some people put it up on the side and then they put something over it. One time the entire system shut down, and what I found out is that some kid had laid a song request paper up against this fan and it overheated. So actually, with that in mind, I'm actually gonna do this. So that nobody can set anything on the front or on the back. So this bad boy is the mixer, and I'll probably just donate this to the school. This is actually mine, but you guys can have it.
Thank you.
It's a Behringer, which is, you know, they work until they don't. It's worked for me for 7 years, so I'm guessing it's decent. It's been dropped a couple times. That was from prom 3 years ago. So what you got here is different channels. You have 4 mic inputs. So typically what I do during a pep assembly is I put mics 1 and 2 into the board, and that's who's speaking over the house. And then you have another, a third one you could put in a cable that you could speak from, or the choir, or something like that. And then a 4th one. What I typically do is I use this cable. These are called phone plugs or 1/4-inch plugs. You'll notice they're just twice as wide as an 1/8-inch plug, which is what goes into your iPod. You'll notice that these are phone plugs. What I've noticed is you can put phone plugs into left and right here and get a decent stereo sound, but for some reason it's not as nice if you do separate channels. Maybe it's just my ear, but I feel like the sound quality is better if you put it in 2 channels right here. Then to control the volume, you're gonna have to use sliders 3 and 4 together as if they were one. Because one of them would be right and one of them would be left. So you gotta use them together. Over here, you have your main volume. So this is your overall volume. One thing to think about with soundboards is you never want to get above 0. You're asking for big time trouble if you get anywhere above 0. So typically I bring up my mains to about 10, and I bring up my iPod to a little bit less, and then I run my iPod at full volume, and that's going to give you the best sound quality. All through here you have all kinds of different options. This is your high frequencies, all on this top. So it says high, 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 high. This is for each channel. So if something sounds too sharp, or if someone sounds too nasally, I turn down their highs. If someone sounds too poppy in the P's and sizzly in the S's, I take some off of their mids. That's where those frequencies are. And then generally for human voices and for music, you want just a little bit of oomph on the bass. Unless it feels too bassy, then turn it down. Don't crank the bass on these because that will blow off the subwoofer. Let the amplifier do the bass work. Right here, the auxiliary doesn't really matter. Those are for effects. You don't need those. And effects, same thing. This is 2 effects channels. Pan means which side is it coming out of, right or left. Typically, you don't need to use that in just school work. Just leave it in the center. It'll come out both sides equally, and then leave these together like that. So this little ditty is a box full of random chords, and actually these adapters are pretty useful. but make sure to keep them handy together in this little box, I found, otherwise they're gonna get buried. This guy right here, this is called an RCA. RCAs are really common adapters. It's got your tip and your ring built into one connector, and it's red and white. These are the ones that you can use with your iPod. So for instance, if you're using your QSC by itself, you just go red, white, iPod, turn it on, volume. Super simple setup. RCAs are about the most universal connector that's ever been created. Then we got a little bit more complicated of things. These are XLR splitters. These go into the back of the Behringer board, and it makes one output into two outputs, which is great because sometimes you want to run things to more than one location. For example, yesterday at the assembly, we run one side just to our speakers, which are set up, and the other side to the two microphones that are going for the wireless system in the gym. So we actually used both of these yesterday. This one here,
Wait, as inputs,
outputs.
outputs.
Outputs on the board because
So
it's female.
Output two microphones?
It's a really tricky setup.
Okay.
I probably should have showed you guys that yesterday. Here actually.
We'll try and figure it out.
Oh, where'd it go? Darn it. Are you still filming?
Yep.
Here actually was something I had bought, but it needs an adapter down to 1/8 inch. This would allow you to go right into the Mackie and then plug it into your iPod, but it needs a 1/4 to 1/8 inch adapter on it. But that's why that's sitting in here. These guys, can you hand me that PV board, Christian? Yeah. This guy, and actually there's two of them here, are for using this PV board. I always keep it on hand because I never know if the Behringer's gonna die halfway through a dance. And if it did, all I'd have to do is plug this guy in. The crappy thing is that he doesn't have XLR outputs. So you just put this adapter, which is a phone plug, in it, and it adapts to XLR. Boom, you're live with a mic cable. Take it out of the Behringer, plug him in here, and you're good. I don't use it that often just because it's kind of a pain in the butt because it has a different power cable, and I just don't like the user interface as much. It doesn't have as much control over the highs and the mids and the lows, but it's decent, it works, and it's a good backup to have. So that's why that exists. You ready, Christian? All right, so what Christian and I are gonna do is put up this light bar. If you think it looks like the top of a fence, you're exactly right. This was left over from fencing Lobo Field. So we have these little tops to fence posts. Point the bolts inward so a kid doesn't take a headshot. And then you're gonna step up here, and Christian and I are gonna have to kind of space out our locations. Can you go that way at all with your stand? And are you on? And I'm gonna basically go up as high as I can with this, because I want the DJ lights. Holy crud. Okay, I don't want it that high. You didn't damage anything, that's all that matters. I want the DJ lights out of the way of the DJ. So I'm gonna come down to the first hole, and then clamp it back down, and now we're actually good. This is the cables box for power. It says IEC power cords. These are those universal power adapters that give electricity to almost everything. This one, you'll notice it's a little bit of a fatty. This is the guy that goes to this amplifier right here. And the reason is because he's a thicker gauge. If you zoom in on the side here, let me find one for you. If you zoom in right here, you can see it says 14 AWG, and that means it's a 14 gauge cable. If you look at any of the rest of these, they're gonna say 18 AWG. Right there, 18 AWG, and they're lightweight, so they're ready to power anything else except the amplifier.
Okay.
So that's why we use the 14 gauge on this bad boy, and he's separate.
Smaller number, more powerful.
Exactly. It actually can carry more electricity through it without overloading. And that's why it's so thick. So we're going to use the 14 gauge cable for the amplifier right there. And then we're going to use 18 gauge cables in all the rest. Now this one you would think is actually a thicker gauge, but it's not. When you read the side of it, it actually still says, oh, this is actually, yeah, 18 gauge. It's just got thicker insulation is the only difference. The only way you can tell what gauge it is by reading the little number on the side.
And gauge is the amount of wire inside, basically?
How many strands of copper it has that is going to conduct electricity. You can run 8 of these types of speakers on one power outlet, no problem. So actually we run our entire system off of one power cord coming out of the wall, and it's never tripped a circuit yet. So I plug an 18 gauge into the Mackie. I've already got my blue power cables in my QSC. I've got my 14 gauge in my amplifier here, and I've got the same situation over there. This is my strongest admonition, is take care of the mic cables. This will be your #1 frustration if you don't do it right. It'll be more frustrating than all this stuff combined if you don't do it right. All mic cables must always have a tie. And kids will constantly try to just coil these things up and then just throw them in a box. And all you will get is a giant mess. Even though they're color coded, you will be untangling wires for the rest of your life. So always, I'm not joking. Always, always, always. Every time a kid rolls a cable, you tie a cable. Roll it, you tie it. It sounds elementary, but it's absolutely critical. The nice thing is when you go to set your stuff up, boom, you got everything ready to go. It's nice and neat. So, untie it, put the tie in the box. Then, you're gonna want to unroll like this. Don't just throw it because it will tangle itself. So unroll, and now you're ready to rock. When you want to roll up a mic cable, there's a very particular way. Never, ever, ever roll it up like an extension cable. That's not how we do it. The reason is because the copper inside of here is pretty fragile, and if it gets twisted up, the entire cord will start twisting. You want your cables to lay nice and flat like this all the time. If you start rolling them wrong, they will start getting kinked up and twisted, and they will never lie flat again. So that's what you want, is just a nice flat roll. Here's how to do it. Make about this much length when you roll. Make your loop. The size of the loop is not critical. It could be a little smaller, a little bigger. Don't make it the size of a fist. Don't make it the size of a lasso, but about like that, like a foot or so. Then when you come around for your next loop, hold it between your fingers, and you want to give it a twist. You have to turn it half turn. That's the deal with the mic cable. So you have to turn it with your wrist, and then it will lie flat against itself. If you don't give it that half turn, it will not lie flat. So every time, boom, half turn, half turn. You see there, it tried to kink on me, so I have to go back and figure out what happened. This mic cable got rolled up wrong once, and it's been kinky ever since. So roll it half turn, half turn, half turn, boom. You got yourself a mic cable. So that's how to roll and unroll them. Let's start hooking some of this stuff up. First thing we want to do is hook up our soundboard to our crossover. Our crossover is this guy sitting here. So we're going to go from our output on our soundboard over to our crossover. So the outputs are right here. We're going to go output, boom, left or right, doesn't really matter unless you want.
It doesn't matter which one.
And then over here in the crossover, we're going to use channel 1, which is right here. So Christian's going to input.
Oh, that's right.
So the best way to do this is like what Christian just did. Look and see visually where you're at. I know my cable has got to be at the bottom. And then you notice also it's got the little lock thing. That's what that is. So my lock matches up with that hole. There you go. Alright, so now we got signal going over to the crossover. One thing I like to do, because there's so much cable and there's not very much room, is I actually go through and twist these, roll them. I roll them up because I don't need that much cable just sitting around on the ground stepping on it. So I say, okay, that's enough cable there. I'm going to tie this off like that, and I'm just going to leave the roll over there, and I'm going to put my output back there. So there we go. There's a whole bunch of different cables on here. There's a bunch of colored ones. I got these ones because it's much easier to see what's going where. So if I'm like freaking out about something's not working, I can immediately see, oh, my orange output is the one that's going to my crossover. So I can problem solve. There's a bunch of black ones in here too. They're the same type of cables. It doesn't matter what you use. The colors are easier for when you're doing live sound too, live performances. You can see who has what mic and turn them on or off. DJ lights, here's what we got. We usually keep them in this big bucket. We got 3 black lights, which we usually put along the front right there. And then we got a couple different, they're just cheapo, simple lights. These ones, we keep this foam on the front just so those bulbs don't get shattered by the other lights. So keep those foam thingies. These lights, if you could film for a second, Wyatt.
Yep. I'm sorry.
That's all right. These lights can be adjusted in several ways. This clamp on the side adjusts the angle of the dangle, and this clamp right here goes onto the DJ light bar. So you just gotta unwind it, and then it fits over there, and then screw it back on wherever you want it, and then adjust your angle. These ones have a sensitivity mode, so you can adjust the sound sensitivity to how fast they'll move and how fast the lights will move. They're just like everything else, they have a power cord that's an IEC. Then we got these other types. These are the laser ones. I usually put these somewhere on the inside, and they have just the same idea. They actually have a power button. Right here is your power cord, and they do have a sensitivity right here. Then we have a spotlight. Actually, we have two spotlights for the disco ball, the mirror ball. So that's those. Those are two spotlights for that. And then this is the motor for the disco ball. So disco ball dangles right off of this right here, plugs in, and that's what helps it to turn. This guy. And you'll notice he's funny because he's got a banana cable on one side and a speak-on cable on the other side. Both of these are very atypical cables, and this is only ever used for the subwoofer. There's also two speak-on to speak-on cables in here. You use speak-on to speak-on if you're going to use the power amplifier with the Yamahas, but we never use them, so that's why they sit in here. Alright, so here's what we do. When the amplifier is bridged mono, a banana plug is actually used to go in the middle here, and it plugs into both reds. I know that sounds a little backwards, but it does. It just plugs straight into there like that. Now you're live. Now you're bridged mono, and you run the rest of your cable down and around, and we're just gonna plug it into the subwoofer. The subwoofer actually has two inputs. You could actually theoretically power this with two separate amplifiers. It doesn't matter. They're both the same. It doesn't really matter which one you go into. A speak-on has a little tab on it, like this. I don't know if you can see that.
Okay.
This tab goes straight in at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, and then you turn to the right, quarter turn. See that how it locked in? This collar is what allows the speak-on cable to be locked. Now it's not going to pull out of there. So when you go to unplug it, it's not going to work unless you pull back on the collar, left turn, quarter turn, and bring it out. So again, to go in, you put the tabs in the hole, turn, quarter turn, actually it's like an eighth of a turn, till it locks. To unlock it, pull the collar, and pull it out.
Okay.
Now we got our subwoofer hooked up. So now we've got pretty much everything set out. I'm going to review the chain of events, and we'll kind of show where we've put all the power cables. So this is the mixer. It's got the 1/8" plug-in. A DJ can put his computer on there, you can put an iPod on it, whatever. It's pretty much ready to rock. From the mixer, we have gone to our top speakers. We put a splitter in the output here, and one of the outputs goes to the QSC, and then it daisy chains, and it daisy chains from the QSC to the Mackie. The other side, the purple one, goes to the other QSC, and it daisy chains to the Mackie. So what we have now is, we look at here and it says R on the back. Every speaker up here, the QSCs and the Mackies are on this right channel, which is this one right here. Oh, sorry. Which is this one right here. That's the channel that's going to control those. The other output, the left output, is orange, and it's going over here to the crossover. We came over with a mic cable to the crossover. We put the cable into the input on channel 1. And then all we did is we put the output, this green cable, the output goes into the input on the power amplifier. The power amplifier then has the banana plug that plugs into the back of the subwoofer with a speak-on cable right over there. So to review, it goes mixer, or actually sound source, mixer, speakers, crossover, amplifier, subwoofer, and that's how you're getting your sounds. Alright? So on top of all this, we have all this crazy DJ light stuff. So Wyatt's going to show you kind of where we put the DJ lights setting out. We got a couple light bars here, and they basically have long power cables that come down, and then we tape on the power strip. It looks really, really professional. We tape on the power strip to the tree so that we can fit everything on here. It's amazing in every way, and it's really a thing of beauty and chord soup. call it spaghetti. And the same thing's happening on the other side. We got the 2 black lights hooked up here on the very front, and everything's ready to go. So now we're ready to power everything on. Here's how you do it. You start at the beginning of your chain. So start with your soundboard. Make sure every level is down first, because then you're not going to hurt anything. Turn on the soundboard first of all. It's on. Now we're going to turn on the next step in the chain, which is the speakers. So you're going to go over to the QSCs and to the Mackies. Again, when we turn these on for the first time, we keep it at about 9 o'clock. Keep it pretty chill. Turn it on. The QSCs take about 4 seconds to power up, so don't freak out yet. There it goes. Right, this toggle switch right here, you want to have it on mic. The only reason you want to have it on line is if you put a phone plug in the center of that one.
Okay.
These speakers have to be clear in the back. This is their heat sink and their fan, and they have to be able to breathe. So don't put these like up right against a thick curtain. For instance, in the cafeteria, don't let them touch that big black curtain if you got them set up there. That'll kill them. Then the Mackies, again, 9 o'clock, power it on. They turn on after about a second, so then those are good to go. Same thing over here. Christian, do you want to do the honors?
Nice.
Oh.
4 seconds. Oh, we don't have the extension
we don't
cord
have
on,
the- yeah.
because we didn't know if it would freak out the subwoofer.
There you go.
Now it's all live. There you go.
All right. So now we go down the chain. The next thing that we have to turn on is the crossover. Now the crossover has no on-off switch, so it's already going to be on. That's okay. The big thing you want to make sure is off when you turn on the system is the amplifier. That was off, so we're all good. The crossover works like this. It's got an input level, which we want to keep in between 0 and 6 decibels. That's basically your overall kind of volume coming into the crossover. And then your low crossover is the amount of frequency that sends to the subwoofer versus the frequency that would go to the mains. So we're going to cut it right at about 120 hertz.
So every lower sound is going to go to
Yep.
the subwoofer. The rest
Everything
is
that is in the
disappear.
frequency spectrum between 120 hertz. Everything above 120 hertz will be ignored by the subwoofer.
Okay.
So if you listen to the system with only the subwoofer on, it'll sound like mud because it's all low frequency. Then our output for our subwoofer is right here. You don't want to go any farther really than 0. Generally I keep it about -10 and that's plenty. Okay? So there's the crossover. Lastly, we can turn on the amplifier because there's no signal coming out of the board. So you can go ahead and turn it on. The signal, the volume I mean, is already down anyways. So we're going to leave those down until we get the system going. Make sure you're drawing air. I can feel right now that wind is coming through and coming out the front. It's going to be a fan. The fan is working, so we're all set. So now we're ready to plug stuff in and give it the show. So I'm just going to plug in my phone real quick.
Can't believe the freshman.
Nice job,
We did the
guys.
whole thing.
Good work.
Of course, with your help. Otherwise, we would have been doomed.
Okay, so once I've got a song going, again, I want to turn it all the way up on my iPod. Now is the time where I want to be very slow and steady. I don't want to turn anything up crazy high. Because if I forgot to turn something on and then I have this way up and then I turn it on, that's when the speaker gets blown. So I just want to give a little bit of output right here. That's my level for my iPod. And then a little bit right here. All right. So now I'm going to only have the sound coming through the speakers. So I'm going to go along and listen to each one and make sure there's output coming out of each one. So now's the moment of truth. We want to try out the subwoofer. So here's how we do it. It's only in the left channel, so I know I can only use the left channel. So notice when I move the left channel right now, nothing's coming out. That's because my volume on the amplifier is all the way down. So I'm going to turn it up to my normal spot.
28.
About, or so. Let's see here. And then, low output. So I do need a little bit more low output on this right now, because my signal's so
And that's
low.
the volume going out, correct?
Yeah. That's what it's sending to the subwoofer. So now you can hear it's only the low, muddy stuff. What you're hearing is the entire song below 120 hertz. If I messed with this, you can hear the different frequencies start to come through. At 70, you're only gonna get the lowest of the low, like that one right there. It's a low note. So that's why 120 is about an appeasing, it's a nice frequency. 120 is kind of the cutoff for a subwoofer. So now we know that that's working, so now we can mix back in the highs. So everything's working. So then the thing we'd want to do at this point is EQ everything. EQ means to equalize. And what you want when you're doing any type of music or sound is a spectrum of sound that's appeasing to the human ear. So you want some nice crisp highs, but you don't want them to be sharp to your ear. If it's too sharp, you turn down your highs.
Okay.
You want some nice strong mids, but you don't want it to sound muddy. And that's why I back off the mids a tiny bit. And then you want nice, strong, punchy bass, but not muddy again. You want to hear the full spectrum of song without any one piece sounding like it's annoying. If there's a piece that's annoying, that's when you go to your soundboard and you make adjustments there. There's nothing you can do, well, there's very little you can do. On the Mackeys, you can do a little bit of adjustment. There's very little you can do with a system if you don't have a soundboard, and that's why it's so important to have a mixer, a soundboard that you can mix stuff with. So I think we're pretty much, we got everything ready to go here. It's working. Yay!
It didn't get you, but
Darn it.
Man! The dance. Pretty much by the time of the dance is ended, I'll be at 1 o'clock. But to start the dance, I start at 10, and then into the dance, I bring it up to 11 here. The Mackeys you have to be careful with because they sound very harsh. Okay. So that's why I spend a lot of time during the dance. I walk in front of the speakers and I listen to them. Usually the QSCs always sound amazing. The Mackeys sometimes sound harsh, and if they sound a little bit harsh, I just back them off a little bit right there, because that means the overall input is just making it too harsh for the system. Here, I generally, when we start the dance, I start at about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then into the dance I get to 11. By the end of the dance, I'm at about 12 or 1 o'clock. Anything past 1 o'clock and you're looking for trouble, it's just going to sound bad. It's going to sound overdriven and distorted. So that's why at the very, very most, if you need more output, you do have to come to these speakers and actually turn up the volume because they are active and the amplifier is sitting inside of these.
okay.
Other than that, you should be able to control your entire volume off your soundboard.
Okay.
The only reason why I would go and mess with the speakers is if I'm getting close to 0 here and I'm getting close to 0 here and I need more volume. Okay. Then I'd actually go to the speaker and physically turn up the speaker. Same thing is true here with the subwoofer. The very, very most that I would ever get with my input is just about +6. The very, very most I'd ever get with my output is just slightly above 0. The time I blew out the subwoofer, I put it all the way up, and that was the problem.